Welcome everyone to We Are Endurance webinar series. I have my great pleasure of having Brady on. He is with TriDot and he's going to tell us all about TriDot and RunDot and what the difference is of both and how you can get involved. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Brady.
Thanks, Hillary. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here and present to you all. So Hillary reached out to us a few months back. She was curious about, knew that AI was that next thing coming in the endurance sports world, and was curious of how it all worked, right? We know that AI is never going to replace a coach, but I feel that it's going to replace coaches that don't use it. So what it does is, as me as a coach, I've been coaching since 2016. I first heard about TriDot in 2017 and kind of knew, okay, this is where the world is going. In 2018, after my season ended, I was curious, so I wanted to try it out for an athlete myself, and I was blown away. I mean, it can program really well. In 6 months' time, I said, well, I'm going to reach out to TriDot, tell them I'm a coach because I'm curious about coaching on this platform because it can save me a lot of time that I can use in return to deliver more value to my athletes. At the time, this was in 2019, I was coaching about 22 athletes one-on-one. And then I had a bunch of athletes that were purchasing like a training program that was static. So they would purchase it and they would follow it along. And I would always get questions. Hey, coach, I know you're not coaching me, but I've been sick for the last 2 weeks and I'm following your marathon training plan and I just don't know where to begin. And I said, oh, geez, I really want to help this athlete out, but that's going to take a lot of time. I can't redo the whole program because they were just paying $30 to purchase the marathon training program. But I would try to help them out as best as I could. And that's where like TriDot comes in or RunDot comes in, because if you miss the training, if you're sick, it's going to adjust and adapt. And when I was coaching the roster of one-on-one athletes, 22 at the time when I came to TriDot, I was spending about 30 minutes every other week programming, looking back, looking at the athletes' workouts and programming for the next 2 weeks. I felt like if I went longer than 2 weeks, life happens. And I would have to go in there and make too many changes. I thought 2 weeks was the sweet spot. And I broke those athletes up into 11 on week one and 11 on week two. And I would spend about 5 to 5.5 hours a day every Friday writing programs, which I love to do. But if a computer can do that for me, then I can do a lot of those things that a coach, that athletes are paying a coach to do. Help them with their strength training, motivate them, help them dial in their race nutrition, their hydration, sweat test, do run gait analysis, just offer more services. Those services I did have, but they would have to purchase those services extra on top of me programming. Now I'm able to bundle everything in into one and say, okay, the AI is going to do the training plan. So now I can use my time to really help and benefit that athlete. Um, and sometimes I might have to make a tweak to their training plan depending if life happens. They're having a stressful week. I can jump in there and make modifications. I'm still in control of the athlete's training program. But at the end of the day, that's more availability for my schedule because all my athletes have my Calendly schedule. They can book calls with me. So that just opened up a whole plethora of more time those athletes that was more accessible and could do more with that time. So Hillary invited me on today to just kind of give you a rundown on how TriDot and RunDot works. The best way to describe it, I like to call it GPS for humans. You tell it where you want to go. Like I like to use the example, I am going to drive to Florida, right? It's going to look at my route and give me the best route from now to Florida. Maybe I'm driving to Orlando. It's going to give me the most efficient way to get there and save time. We all know we're going to stop to get gas, so we look and it's like, okay, it's going to take us, I don't know how many hours it takes to drive there if you were to drive straight and didn't have to get gas because it doesn't factor in, those pit stops. But as you get off the highway and get gas, well, that ETA of when we're going to arrive is going to change a little bit. I like to say training is the same way. We tell TriDot, we tell RunDot where we want to end up. That is our big, we'll say A race, that big kahuna that we're really training for. For me right now, I'm doing the Boston Marathon in 2 weeks. So that was my big kahuna. So back in December, I told TriDot, I am running the Boston Marathon. That is my A race. That is my final destination. And it's able to say, well, you're an athlete that's 39 years old. I'll get into like the RunDot, TriDot, and those kind of RunDot scores and SwimDot scores, and I'll get into that in a moment. But what it's doing is it's quantifying a lot of data on users that are like me, using my data that's coming in from my Garmin watch, to come up with a program to say, well, based on our training, if you start today and that race is 6 months out, this is where you can expect to end up. Now we start putting in those pit stops. I'm going to do this B race, this half marathon, this 10K leading up to the Boston Marathon. How might that impact the Boston Marathon? Not too much if you put it in as a B, we call it a B race, because a B race is just like pulling off the highway, getting gas and getting right back on. Whereas if I was to put in, say, another A race, there was a half marathon I really cared about, that I wanted to build up for, peak, taper, race, and then recover. Well, that's like stopping overnight somewhere, I like to say. So that's going to have a big impact on my Boston Marathon time, because I'm going to essentially miss about 5 weeks of training. So with TriDot, if you put in a marathon, there's going to be a 3-week taper. So you're going to peak 3 weeks out, you have race day, and you have about a 2-week recovery, and then you'll get back onto the training. So that's a big pit stop. I like walking through this with athletes because I like to show that cause and effect. How much did this half marathon really mean to you? We could put it in as an A race, and here's your potential. But if we put it in as a B race, yeah, you'll be about 1 minute slower. But that's still faster than you are right now. And ultimately, the change, what happens to that Boston Marathon race prediction, and I'll walk you through this in a minute, pretty much goes unchanged. Maybe it changes by 15 seconds, because with a B race, you're training, you're not going to have a full taper. You're just going to have a little bit of a taper to freshen up, to get ready to race that race well. And then you'll have a 2-3 day recovery after that race, and you're right back on the highway training towards that marathon. Where Boston is 2 weeks away, I'll use the Bay State Marathon, which is in October here in Massachusetts, as like a good example of how it works. So without further ado, I'll share my screen and just kind of give you an overview of how that all works. So when you come to TriDot or come to RunDot, Hillary has some links that she can share to give you guys a little bit of time on the platform before you have to decide if it's right for you, and actually subscribe. You'll set up an account with your email address and set up a password, and then it's going to ask you a couple of questions. If you're coming on from TriDot, it's going to ask you about your swim, bike, and run history. There's a couple of questions because it wants to get some data, some initial data, as to where you are in an athlete. It's gonna ask you, like, how fast are you swimming currently? Do you know your bike, your FTP if you're training with power? If you don't, do you know how long it's going to take you to cover, say, 15 miles? And then when it comes to the run, it's going to ask you what's your most recent 5K time. And then it's going to set up some training zones based on that. So we won't dive too much into the training zones. I'll just kind of give you an overview on that, because I think I'm speaking to a lot of athletes, so probably know different paces. We all know threshold and lactic threshold and tempo and zone 2. So I won't waste your time with all of that, but I'm happy to geek out on that too if you want. So once you've set up your profile, that's where I'm gonna show you. It's gonna generate a training plan. At first, with TriDot and RunDot, we have 2 training phases. We have a development phase, which is going to put you into that development phase at first. But as soon as you add a race, it might put you into what we call a race preparation phase, or I call it the stamina phase. So depending on your projected time for a certain race, it's going to work backwards. We call it reverse periodization, and say, okay, the Bay State Marathon is in October. This athlete only needs 16 weeks to prepare for this event. Prior to 16 weeks, the goal is to develop that athlete's speed and power. So the workouts might be a little bit higher of intensity, but shorter in duration. And as we like to say, first we want to get strong before we go strong before long, fast before far. So we're trying to raise our speed pyramid, or, 10 pole thing of like, you're setting up a TP and you want to get that TP as high as it can go, right? Because when we're running a marathon or pacing a 70.3 triathlon, 140.6, we're basically just holding a subset percentage of our threshold. So if we take a marathon, for instance, you have your threshold, that's your 1 hour. For a lot of people, that might be their 10K pace. And we're going to run that marathon somewhere between 87% and 95%, depending on how long we're going to be out on that course. RunDot, TriDot's going to help analyze some of that and give us a suggested pace. So the higher we can get that tent pole, the faster those percentages then become. So so I say that's the most important training phase. When I do consultations with athletes, I often see like a race, a race, a race, a race, a race, like throughout the whole season. I'm like, whoa, you have no time to develop. You're just going like stamina for one event to the next event to the next event. And you're telling me, coach, I've been training for years and I'm just not getting any faster. Um, and then we talk about their races and what they've done in the past, and if they've tapered for them and all of that. And more often than not, they've left themselves very little time to develop their speed, as they're just trying to develop stamina for the next race and the next race. So I help them that's our jobs as coaches, is to help our athletes prioritize their race season. They're all important to us, but what are those key races that we really want to excel at, that we want to throw all the marbles in at? That's where RunDot and TriDot can help us kind of find out some of those things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, share the whole screen. Let's see if this works. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent. So once you've onboarded and answered those initial questions, it's going to generate a training plan. It probably won't look as busy as this. This is my demo account, so I play around with it all the time and do different demos. So it probably won't look this busy. So the first thing it's going to do is, after you've answered those questions, if you're on TriDot, it's going to give you a swim dot, a bike dot, and a run dot score. So there's a 49, a 64, and a 58. I'll let you know what all those mean in just a second. If you're on RunDot, you're only going to see the RunDot score, right? Because we're not training for triathlon or cycling. We're just specifically training for running. Now, if you're an athlete that is primarily a runner, but you dabble in triathlon every now and again, my suggestion is to set up an account on TriDot, because there is a run-only mode, and it puts it pretty much into RunDot under the TriDot skin, if you will. So it will behave just like RunDot in that run-only mode, so that you don't have to toggle back and forth between TriDot and RunDot, because even though it's under the same umbrella, they're a little bit different, so they require two different accounts. So usually we have to like offboard one account and onboard the other to switch between back and forth. So that's one of the questions I ask athletes at first. Yes, you're training for a marathon, but you do dabble in triathlon. Okay, this is how we're going to want to set you up. So what those dot scores mean, those are generated by, your age, if you're male or female, how long you've been in the sport, and a bunch of data points that I can't even get into it without taking up a lot of your time. But generally, if I see a 49, like I think this demo count is, I think I set it up for like my age, 35 to 39. So with the data that I put in there, I'm right in the middle of the pack as a swimmer. I'm just a little bit above the middle of the pack as a cyclist, and I'm a tiny bit above the middle of the pack on the run. So nobody's 100 except for somebody like Meb, right? Meb coaches on RunDot. He's 100. That's taking their 5K pace, and it's basically world record pace. We had a gentleman, he was 91, so we were doing a demo, and he was 100. He did like a 45-minute 5K, which is world record pace for a 91-year-old. So his RunDot score was a 100. So that's relative to your age group, your respective age group, not everybody in the sport, just your specific age group and gender, is how those scores are tabulated. So we always say we want to bump the dot, right? Every time we run a 5K and we improve, that dot score is going to go up. The higher that dot score, the faster you likely are in that respective age group. So that's what those dot scores mean. So we've set up a count, and now it's generated a training plan. Now we might want to personalize it to, our needs. Maybe we need right now this athlete doesn't have any rest days in there, and maybe the volume's too much. So there is some settings that you can do to adjust, and then it's going to regenerate a training plan based around those limitations that you give the system. So once you're in here, you would come up here to this hamburg button, and you can set up your training schedule. So in here, and I know I'm going to kind of go quick, but when you set up a TriDot or RunDot account, I say check your emails and check them frequently, because every couple of days, some information is going to drip. How do you add a race? How do you modify your training schedule? All those videos are going to be emailed to you over the course of time. There's even a tutorial as soon as you set up with like the basics that we're going over here as to how to kind of set everything up. And then there's just so much that the platform can do that we don't want to overwhelm athletes, so we let it drip out over time. So the first thing you might want to do is say, I need a rest day. I need to change my training schedule. So you would come right up in here, and you could easily change your schedule and tell it, do you need a day off? Yes, I do. And then you can choose what day off. I'll just do Monday for the time being. Once you hit confirm, it's going to take 3 to 5 minutes to regenerate a training program, right? Because it's like, okay, there's one day off. That means we can probably add a little bit more intensity to those other days, because we're not trying to distribute it over 7 days. We're distributing that training stress over 6 days now. So the system's able to take that into account. The next thing one might want to do is, well, this is a lot of workouts right now. Maybe I want to take a look at my volume settings. So if we come into sessions, we can actually tell the system, what kind of settings we want. And sometimes when I'm working with athletes, depending on what their goals are, I might change these around during the season. So if their goal race is, like, we'll say the Boston Marathon, I might put their run to high volume while putting their bike and their swim, I still want them cross-training to low volume. So they're going to get a lot of quality on the run. I still want them cross-training because I don't want them running every day, so that they can absorb the training better. So I can go in here and change that. Or I can actually tell the system exactly how many days a week I want to swim, how many days I want to cycle, and how many days I want to run. So you have the volume settings, which is just a slide of the taskbar here. And you also have, I need fixed weekly sessions. Exactly what you want to do. I want to do one bike a week, and I want to run 4 times a week. You can set that up fairly easily. Are you guys still there? I got a notification.
Yeah.
Okay, still there. Okay. It said I was disconnected for a second. So after you set that up, I'll go ahead and set this down to 2 swims per week. I'll say I understand. And now I can save that, and it's going to override that low, standard, or high volume. Then we can further tweak it. We can actually go back into schedule after we've told it how much volume we want, after we've told it the day off of the week that we want. We can actually go into this advanced schedule customization and actually move things around. So we already told the system, hey, I'm gonna have Mondays off. That's my rest day. But maybe I want to swim on Tuesdays. I can drag that over Tuesday. So you can drag these workouts around on the days that make sense for you and your schedule. I won't spend too much time on there, but say you want to run on Fridays instead of Mondays because you're going to focus on strength on Thursdays. Once you're happy with the schedule, you can hit save, then give it about 3 to 5 minutes. It's going to generate your training schedule based on you and your goals. Right now, I don't have any races in there, so it has me in a development phase, which means I'm training for speed and power. I'm trying to get faster. That is my goal. I'm not developing stamina yet. But now we're ready for a race. We're like, we know what we want to do. We have our eyes on the prize. We know what that big kahuna event is. So now we can add it to our training schedule, and that's when the periodization is going to start to take place. So I've already confirmed. So next thing I'll do is I'll add a race. So we'll take us over to what we call race X. And this is where we can set up our races and kind of prioritize them. I'll just do a couple of examples there. So it knows my current fitness now, and it's not telling me what I'm going to be capable to run on today's fitness in October. It already knows, based on some of my data, based on athletes like me, if I follow the TriDot or RunDot training, this is where I can expect to be on race day. So I'll show you how that works, because if you like data and stuff, it's a cool place to geek out. So here we would just add a race. I mentioned my big race at the end of the season is the Bay State Marathon. So I'm going to put that in as an A race. That is my big kahuna. That's the one I want to peak for. That's the one I want to be optimized for. I want the proper taper. I want to feel my best for that race. Maybe I'm trying to qualify for Boston. So then we'll just select what sport is it. So if you're on RunDot, it's only going to show running races. If you're on TriDot, there's a whole bunch of options. So in this case, it's just a run event. It's a marathon. We have some of the larger races in our system. I know the Bay State Marathon, it's a local race here. It's not in the system, so I would just simply click add a custom race. And I'm going to say Bay State Marathon. It's in Lowell, Massachusetts. I want to say off the top of my head, it's October 19th. Yes, it is. That is a Sunday. So it's October 19th. And I'm just going to hit confirm. What it's doing now, where it's loading, is it's starting to crunch the numbers, look at, okay, where we are right now, I have no other races. So it's starting to set up some of that periodization. It's deciding, based on this athlete's thresholds, how many years that they've been running, do they need 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, 24 weeks to build stamina to cover that marathon? And it also depends on how long they're going to be out on that course for. So we just added that race. One thing I want to show you, if I come down to my thresholds, we can look at my current run threshold. Current run threshold is a 7:41 pace. So when we look at the Bay State Marathon, it's actually going to say, in October, your current threshold is going to be, it's not going to be 7:41. The system anticipates it to be something else, because it assumes you're following the training. And if you're following the trainer, based on historical data, this is where you can expect to end up. Just like how long it's going to take me to get to Florida. As I start putting in other races, well, we can see how that impacts what that end result is, right? So I like to say, add your most important race of the year first, and then kind of backfill and watch what happens. Because you might want to change, you might do, I'm also doing main 70.3. I'm probably going to put that in as an A race. I know that's going to impact, it's going to slow down my predicted time for the Bay State Marathon, because I'm going to be building stamina for that event. So I'm going to be out of that development phase where I'm trying to develop speed and power. I'm more focused on stamina for July 27th, I think it is. So there's going to be a 3-week taper and a 2-week recovery. So that's like 5 weeks that I'm giving up that development phase, where I could have been developing more speed. So there's a pro and a con. So there's but we're all athletes. We want to race multiple events. So I just want to show you how that all works. So now if I come back to my races, I can actually go into the Bay State Marathon, and it's going to tell me that my planned FTP, remember it was a 7:41, but if I put no other races in the calendar and I follow the TriDot training between now and October, this is where it would expect my threshold pace to be. So that's like 12 seconds faster per mile. That would be my 1 hour threshold pace. That's a pretty good gain. I would be very happy with that. So if I follow the TriDot training, I would expect to be able to run a 3:34 in October. Now, if I was running it in 2 weeks from now, it wouldn't be a 3:34. It would be let's see, it would be, so it has me running at 91.8% of my threshold pace. So it would be not, so the pace I would be holding would be 91.8% of a 741. That's where I'm at currently if I was running in 2 weeks. But because I'm going to follow the TriDot training, I'm going to make gains along the way. That's where I can expect to be in October. So I'd be really happy with that. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to add any more big races because that might impact this time. And my goal is to qualify for Boston. So maybe that's a qualifying time. Um, for a male 35 to 39, it's not a qualifying time. So the times just keep getting faster. So if I come over to pace, it's, this is where you can look at some of the more granular data. You can add add the route map and get some of that. So I actually imported that already. So I could use it as an example because that may impact that final time. Profile of that course. So if you were running, say, an uphill marathon, I don't think anyone would pick an uphill marathon as their big race. Maybe they would. That pace will change. So let's see how the course profile impacts that overall result when we add that elevation profile. So we're going to bring in that course map. It's doing a lot. The reason it's taking so long is it's doing a lot of calculations, right? It's analyzing the course, it's analyzing the pace, and it's saying, okay, if you ran at an 8:10 effort, uphill, downhill, this is the time that you could expect. Bay State's a pretty flat course, so it didn't have much of an impact. So the time is still about the same. So now if we were to go back to TriDot, I'm going to jump back over to TriDot. I can show you some of the training phases, the periodization as we call it. So now I'm here. I would assume that my training plan has been generated now. Yep, there we go. If we look at next week, my days off are there. I had moved my swim day from, I think it was Sunday to Tuesday. So now it's generated on the days that I have the ability to train. And now the workouts have populated. So if we come up to this calendar, this is where we can actually see what training phases we're in. Because the question I always have for myself, am I developing stamina right now or am I developing speed? So there's two colors in those training cycles to make it really easy as you toggle through the months. So if I hover over this, it's going to tell me I'm in a development phase. So right now, what the system is trying to do, or what the training program is trying to do, is get me faster. It wants to get me down to that 728 threshold, because currently I'm at a 741. So that's its focus, that's its plan right now. As I add more races to it, that will change. But if I toggle over, you can see there that purple bar. What I'm looking for is a pink bar. There it is. That pink bar is the start of my race preparation phase. This is at the moment of time in the season where I'm going to start focusing on less about speed and now developing that stamina so that I can hold, 91.8% of my threshold pace for 26.2 miles. So if I hover over that, the system says it's going to take me 16 weeks to develop that stamina. I've seen it as little as 12 and I've seen it as much as 24. It really just depends on the athlete. So now the training, the workouts, they're going to shift and they're going to be less about that speed power and more, you'll see more tempo runs, you'll see longer threshold runs, because now it's not how fast we can go, but for how long we can go without slowing down. That's what the system wants to train us for. So I'm going to go back to RaceX and I'm going to add main 70.3. All right, so we're over here. We've just got that one race on the schedule. The nice thing about this too is if I was to try to say add another A race, maybe I wanted to do a half marathon, say September 27th, or whatever that weekend might be. If I put it in as an A race, it might kick it out and say, nope, can't do it because it knows that between September 27th, we'll say, hypothetically, and October 19th, that's just not enough time for a proper marathon cycle to build us up. It's going to suggest, why don't you put that fresh for it? Maybe we want to practice our marathon pacing at that event. And then it's going to give us a little recovery time. So it's like stopping on the highway, getting gasoline and getting back on the road. Doesn't have very much of an impact on that final result of what we can expect to do on race day. So let's go ahead and let's add mean 70.3. So now we're going to add a triathlon. It's a half iron event. Actually, I can type meaning because I know that a lot of all the Ironman races and the T100 races are in here, and some of the bigger like what's the big one happening in Florida?
St. Anthony's.
Of endurance sports. Wildflower, that's coming back.
A wildflower.
Yeah, so some of those bigger races are in here. Other ones you would just click add a custom race. So we're going to add main, giving me a little, it's saying that my training volume is a little low to safely complete that because I used that fixed training schedule. I told it I only wanted to cycle 1 day a week. So it's flagging that and saying, well, if you really want to do well at this event, you're going to want to adjust your training volume. So it's nice that it has that like kind of safety net in place to say, okay, you might want to change some of those settings so they can get properly ready. Because 1 day of cycling a week, yeah, you might get to the finish line, but it might hurt a little bit. So that's what it's telling me to do. But I'm just going to ignore that for now for time's sake. And I'm going to hit continue so we can add that race and we can see what sort of impact is that going to have on base date. And then what sort of impact is it going to have on our periodization on getting ready for now main and the Bay State Marathon, because those are both important races, to this particular athlete. They want to do well at both. They want to peak. They're the big, I call them the big kahuna events. So that asterisk is going to stay there until the athlete goes ahead and changes their volume to, in this case, we would want it to be at standard volume because it's a triathlon event. So we can come in here. The courses are already in there, so it's analyzing the elevation profile and it's coming out with, that, okay, on race day, what can I expect to do if I follow the TriDot training and complete all my workouts and do them as intended? This is where I can expect to be, which is a little faster than my current thresholds. So coming here, 45-minute swim, 304 bike, 202. Yes, I can break 6 hours. That's been a goal for a long time. So that's what it's predicting to do. That asterisk is still here because it knows that you got enough swim volume on there, Brady, but you don't have a nice cycling volume to be able to do this. Please update your minimum. So it wants me to set that to standard is what it's telling me to do. But we can actually open it up and take a look at that bike course. So it knows the course profile. It's got 2,838 feet of elevation gain. So I like to, when I'm working with athletes and we're trying to select a race, maybe they're just going for a PR. We might run a couple of simulations. There's a simulation feature in here. So we might run a couple of simulations on some different courses because course like, say, Nice, France, 70.3, that's got, I think, close to 6,000. No, maybe it's 5,500 feet of elevation gain. If I put that course in here, my predicted bike split might be 3 hours and 30 minutes, right? That's going to significantly impact. So maybe that's not the PR course, whereas Galveston, Texas, which just happened, is a nice flat course. What's that? Oh, okay.
Yes.
So if I put Galveston, Texas in there, well, that's a flat course. It doesn't have 2,800 feet of climbing to slow me down. My predicted bike split might be 2 hours and 45 minutes there. So I like to kind of work with athletes on that, crunching the numbers. If I come over to, the power here, it's actually analyzing the different hills and what my speed would be if you're training with power, how that power can change. And it actually a lot of folks are familiar with best bike split in the triathlon world. This is kind of our variation of.
Yes, am I speaking with the pharmacy?
So here it actually gives you that, rather than holding, say, what was that target power? I think it was on the overview there. 192 watts would be that target power. Rather than holding 192 watts uphill, downhill, on the flats, well, we know we don't have to go whatever our predicted pace is. Say it's, oh, okay, it's right there, 18.3 miles an hour. We know going up a hill, we're not going to average that, right? We're going to put up a little bit more power. Maybe we're climbing at 10 miles an hour. Our descents might be 30 miles an hour. So it's factoring all that in and coming out with this pacing program. I don't get into this too much with athletes unless they're like really data nerds. Then we'll, kind of geek out on this and send it to their cycling computer so it prompts them what power to hold. But for the most part, I'm just saying 192 watts is what you want to hold. And then, looking at their thresholds on the uphills, if it's 2 minutes or longer, like don't go over this. And on the downhills, kind of coast a little bit, recover.
Brady, I'm just
Yes.
gonna jump in because we only have like about 15 minutes left.
Yep.
I wanted to just a couple of things I wanted you to address if it's okay.
Of course.
Um, One of the things is, when you go to training,
Yes.
there are different numbers. So if we can go back to the
The
training.
training. Definitely. Yeah, I think everyone gets the gist of it probably by now.
Yeah, definitely. And if we go back to the training plan, the calendar, right? There are different numbers. Like say, for example, on Monday the 7th, it says session XP 0 to 45. And it gives you say a number of 43 or a number of like this one here, this threshold, it was 39 out of 41 and it gives you a 96. Could you just
Yeah.
explain what that is and also some of the fun elements that are incorporated, like I just got a pony. Some
Yeah.
people get, a unicorn, whatever.
Unicorn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So what Hillary is mentioning here is each workout has a total, we call it experience points, XP points, they're called. So it distributes the whole week, and it helps that athlete when they're training and they go, Coach, I'm not going to be able to fit in all my workouts for the entire week. Life is busy right now. I say, well, look at those XP points. Those that have the highest XP are the most crucial workouts of the week. So prioritize those first. And then it's going to give you the XP points based on how well you did that training. So each workout is going to be scored on how well it was executed. How well did you stick to that training? Here you can see I got a 96. I'm training on another account, but I have like my Strava hooked up and I have my Garmin to my actual account so that some data is getting picked up in here. So you can see the swim that I just did recently. It didn't match up because I was doing threshold 300s and not sprints. So if I come in here, now it's gonna give you the workout. Or I should show you another bike workout first, one that wasn't completed yet. But in the workout instructions, this is what a lot of folks are used to. Okay, what's my workout? I got a 10-minute warm up. All this workout, when you sync up your Garmin, sync up Zwift, it can all the workouts can be pushed to there. So a lot of folks are used to pushing a workout to their watch and just following the prompts. So the system's able to do all that. So here the workout was 3 by 7 minutes, the main set at threshold pace. It wanted everything else in zone 2. So it's, I stuck to it as well as I could. And here, this is what it's scoring off of. That I had almost 18 minutes out of 24 minutes at zone 4. If I had 24 of 24 minutes, that would have been a 100, a unicorn, right? We call it a unicorn in our TriDot and RunDot community. We're always celebrating unicorns, and if you get more than one unicorn in a row, you might get like a ponycorn or a Pegasus. On the swim, we have narwhal. So if you execute that swim according to plan, it would be a narwhal. I wonder if I haven't checked my own account yet to see if I got that narwhal today, because I feel like I was dialed in today. So that's what it's scoring as to how well did you execute the training according to what the system or the coach wanted you to do. which for me as a coach, when I'm looking at the calendar view, I can quickly look and say, okay, this workout they executed it correctly. That little lightning bolt, what that is that's the athlete's training stress. The 54 is what was prescribed. The 49 is what the athlete actually accumulated, because you saw I was only 18 minutes out of 24 minutes. So I didn't on zone 4. So I didn't get all the training stress that was prescribed, but I was very, very close. So what the prediction when we're looking at base state, the system is assuming that I'm going to score a 76 or better on all the workouts between now and race day. There is a setting where you can say, well, 76 is kind of high. I think I want to start at 65, 65 or better, and that will impact. Or some of us type A's, it's like, no, I'm always going to get like 80s.
Cool, thank you. I have another question.
Yes.
Can you also talk about RunDot in term, so I have a running group, and
Mhm.
many of the runners are either doing a 10K, a half, a marathon. Um, does it
Yeah.
matter what they do in order to sign up for RunDot?
So I'll jump over to my RunDot account. The last thing I wanted to show you is the periodization cycles. When I added mean 70.3 changed.
Mhm.
So you can see now I have a purple bar here. So I'm going to take 15 weeks to develop the stamina now for main 70.3. And then after that event, you can see that after that event, we're then 16 weeks out from base date. So I have no development phase in between. Usually I don't like to see that as a coach. I like to see some development time between each race, but it really depends on the goals of the athlete. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. And let's jump over to RunDot. So if I go to RunDot, I have a demo account there too. So I'll pull that up. And you'll see it's just the branding is green instead of red. And go to my calendar. Very similarly, you can set up your training schedule. So if you come to sessions, you can tell the system, I was telling it, I can only run 3 times a week. I'm going to strength train twice a week, but you can change those volume preferences, and that's going to change the training plan. Or if you want, fixed sessions, you can say, I would really just want to run 4 times a week. I'm going to do some cross training, or I'm working with my coach. They have me doing some mobility work or stability work on those other days. You can set that, give it about, now it's going to regenerate a training plan. So it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, depending on your internet speed. So while it's doing that, Hillary, did you want me to jump over to the RaceX side for RunDot?
It's the same,
Yeah.
I think what I'd like to do now, since we have 10 minutes, is
Mhm.
open it up for questions.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question before?
Yes, Ray.
Okay, just quick question. So I've just been using TriDot for about 10 days now, so I'm very new to it. And I have been doing a lot of strength training before, especially for my knees, because I have pretty bad arthritis in my right knee. And
Mhm.
it was interesting to see that a lot of the strength training was based on resistance band. There was also some plyometrics rather than, a lot of heavy weights doing deadlifts, things like that. And I was wondering if that was a function of my age, rather than, anything else.
Yeah, great question. The reason for more resistance bands and stuff is because we don't know how the athlete moves, like what their movements look like. So the system doesn't want to prescribe a deadlift, under heavy weight if their movements are incorrect. So it's going to prescribe mostly resistance bands. I tell, my athletes, unless they're on the subscription of my offering that I'll do a strength training program for them. I say any of the workouts that TriDot or RunDot is prescribing, you can always do those with weights instead of resistance bands. A lot of those movements are single leg movements because that's a single leg sport. But like you said, in that off season, when we're not, developing stamina for a certain event, I want those athletes lifting heavier weights for, more sets, like say 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps to fatigue. When we're in season, I might only want them, depending what event, if they're getting ready for a marathon, I might want them in that strength phase to do 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps. But in the off season, that same strength focus area would have been, 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. And I changed those movements. We do have something coming, and I can share this now, called the ABC's Active Body Check, which is going to be a screening tool that's embedded into this to see how well an athlete moves, look for their strengths, weaknesses, and dysfunctions. There's like a grading score. So it's a squat, and it's going to tell you to stand a foot away from the wall, take a dowel, hold it above your head, and it wants you to squat to parallel femur. That means your femur bone is parallel with the floor without touching the wall, with that dowel, right? I can't do it. I've gone through the ABCs, and I know it's my thoracic spine. For the longest time, I thought it was my ankle mobility, but I cleared that. So as you go through that, it's going to say, oh, it's the thoracic spine. Then it's going to prescribe the stretches that I need to do to loosen that up, so that the next time I go through that, hopefully I can squat a little bit better. So then the system isn't going to prescribe, barbell squats for me, because that would be a high risk of injury for someone with a tight thoracic spine. So that work is.
So 2 follow-up questions. So one, I assume you take a video of, you exercising, and is that how they evaluate your form?
It will be, it's like a scoring metric. So you'll put in a 0, a 1, or a 2, 0 being you passed it with flying colors.
Oh, okay.
1, or no, 2, you passed it with flying colors. 1, it's questionable. I almost got to parallel. And
you're assuming people will be honest.
They want, and it's going to say, like, be honest, because why would you want to skip the corrective work if you were on the fence? To me as an athlete, it's like, oh, if I'm not a 2, I want that mobility and stability work that's going to get me, that I can work over time, that's going to get me to that 2, so that my squat can be safe to load with a barbell. For my athletes, I already do this because I'm a strength coach, so I already screen them. I get them on video, or if they're local, they come to my house, or I meet them at their house or the track, and I screen them just as the computer would. So if they're not working with a coach, well, it's the honor system. But it will say, be honest, because you will get the corrective exercises after you go through it. To make that form better, whatever it may be. Like it has me doing, gosh, I can't think of the name of the stretch, but it has me doing a couple of different stretches that I've never heard of for my lumbar spine.
Brady.
It's like the best stretch ever because my body needs it.
Okay.
And that's going to.
Okay. Yeah. And so I assume that once you put in your last race for the year, that everything else is off season.
Yep. And then the off season work, we call it off season or preseason, where the goal is in the off season to develop more speed, more power, faster for next season.
Got it. Thank you.
So Brady, so there's also one more thing that I wanted you to just talk about, and that's the integration with 23andMe, the DNA stuff. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how somebody could download their data, upload it into TriDot or RunDot, and
this one I'll go to my actual account for, because I have my DNA there. So yeah, if you've done a 23andMe, DNA Fit, Ancestral.com, you can actually upload those genetics to, there's certain genes that are associated with recovery time, muscle fiber type, whether you're more type 1, which is like more fast twitch. Those you tend to see in your sprinters versus type 2. And then the more information the system has, the better it's going to be able to program. So when I went through it, mine is, I'll show you. Let me actually go into my real account here. No more demo accounts. Now you're going to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and we'll see how well I did with that swim. Oh, I got a 56. I got to take a look at that because I thought I was pretty dialed in today. So I did something wrong. So coming over to metrics or diagnostics is where it lives. So if you have that data, you would just download the raw data. I just did it for 23andMe because I guess they're going bankrupt, I just heard.
Yes, I actually did too, and I deleted the account.
Everything, yes. I asked them to take my sample, throw it away because they actually got a court order allowing them to sell that data. And I'm like, I don't want them selling my data. So I just downloaded my raw data. As soon as I got that, I deleted everything else. I had them, delete it because I don't want them selling it. I was torn because I was like, oh, maybe it will help somebody else in the future. But I'm like, but then do they know my name? I didn't want to go there. So if you've already done it, you can download it and then you would just upload it. There would be an upload here. I've already uploaded it, so it's not prompting me to upload it. But there's a couple of metrics it looks at. So it looks at training intensity response. My muscle fiber type, 40% power, 60% endurance. So what the training will now do is it will give me a little bit more stamina work. So I'm going to respond better to longer threshold efforts than I will shorter, faster efforts based on my genetics. Now, a coach I was working with in 2019, he was the opposite. 60% power, 40% endurance. And we were like in the same fitness at the time. And he would just demolish me in 5K, 10K, half marathon. We were pretty close. Then we get into the marathon and I got him beat by 5 minutes. We get into Ironman and I got 20 minutes on him. And it's funny how we were like the same fitness, right? But because of our genetics, our overall end result was different. So I said, one of these days we got to race a 70.3 because that's where we're going to be even Steven. Then it's going to say, okay, aerobic potential, is it low, medium, or high? It's, high. So it's looking at, that ability to shuttle oxygen to the working muscles, VO2 max. Recovery rate is slow. I have a hard time absorbing my training. So when it did this, I got more of those zone 2 days than I would have liked. But I started getting better results because I was more fresh going into those workouts. So the prescription of my training changed a little bit to add in more zone 2 days. I only had like one zone 2 day a week, which I liked because I was like, oh, I'm getting faster, I'm pushing, I'm sweating hard, I'm breathing hard, but I wasn't absorbing the training. So I was actually kind of slowing down over time, if you will. As soon as I put the genetic data in, it's like, okay, now I got, I'll have 2 hard days and a recovery day is how it changed, or 2 hard days and a swim day. And then I would agree with this. If I'm not careful, I can get injured fairly easy, moderate risk of injury. Which I agree with. I've had all the running related injuries. And now knowing this, I'm a little bit smarter. I do my strength training. I tend not to skip it. Even on those stressful weeks, I say, well, I know my strength training is in the long run going to keep me more consistent in this sport. So that's how it works. Oh, there is an upload. So if I ran another genetic test, say on Ancestry, I could upload that data and see how it compares. But the results would pretty much stay the same. Then if you hit view results, it's going to explain a little bit more about what it all means. If you really like to geek out on that stuff, it's all there, and what genes it's looking at that are used to, come up with these. So all that's in there.
Very cool.
For those that like really dive into the nitty gritty, it's there.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
And,
I think that's
oh,
it for today. So I thank you very, very much. I really appreciate your time.
where's
I do have a discount code that anybody could use. You can get 2 weeks or 2 months for free. And check it out, and just contact me or Brady, and you could just join us. And I'm loving this. I joined TriDot, oh, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago maybe, and it's just been amazing. So I'm really, really happy that I'm part of the team and part of the group, and I know you're gonna love it too. All right, well, thank you.
It did wonders for me in my first year, so much so that I said, I got to bring all my athletes over because I thought I was at my ceiling and my ceiling had a heaven.
Love it, love it. All right, well, thank you.
Right.
Have a great
Feel free to
day.
reach out if you have any questions. You have Hillary's contact information. Anything she can't answer, she'll forward over to me, and she knows I like to geek out and answer anything and everything. So we'll be in touch.
All right.
All right. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Thank you.